Peace, family. It's your brother, Marc Lamont Hill. You're watching the Marc Lamont Hill official YouTube channel. Sorry for the late start. I wish I had a more interesting answer, except I just fell asleep. I have been doing this for 100 and, today's day 197. So, doing this for a long time. And I am physically worn out. And I sat down uh, at 9 o'clock and then 10 o'clock. And then I woke up at 11:30 and said, let me do it before midnight. Then I said, well, it's midnight somewhere on the West Coast. And that's so I took a nap. Can't even call it a nap 4 hours later. But I'm glad to have done it because I feel a lot better. But I want to shout out everybody who has been following us for these 197 days. Everybody who has been committed to staying on top of this story, which is a story of pain and a story of global cruelty and indifference and complicity as we talk about Israel's war on Gaza. And I'm so grateful that you all have stayed with us on this journey, because the goal here for me is to tell the truth. The goal here for me is to speak up and speak out against what has amounted to a genocide in the Gaza Strip and part of a broader project of colonial domination against the Palestinian people. And so often, corporate media doesn't want to tell that story. So often, mainstream outlets don't want to give us the work that we pay for. Right? We ask for honesty, we ask for coverage, we ask for developments, we ask for different perspectives, we ask for all of the things, and we get so little. And so what many of us have been trying to do is tell the truth, despite that, to stand up, to step up, to produce a kind of radical honesty in our media representations, in our media accounts, in our journalism, etc. A kind of radical honesty that says, hey, we are going to not frame this as a war against terrorism or a war on Hamas even, but we're going to frame this as a war on Gaza, because at this stage, at this moment in history, at this juncture in this particular struggle, that's what it's become. It's become a war on Gaza, a war on the Palestinian people, and that's what we have to tell the truth about. And part of what it means to tell the truth at this stage, first, is to begin with the bodies. One of the most tragic things that we have to deal with right now is just the sheer enormity of the number of people who have died. As of right now, at least 34,049 Palestinians have been killed. 34,049. I remember when that number was 10,000 and 20,000 and 25,000 and 30,000. And each time we kept saying, well, you know what? It can't get worse because the numbers can't keep going up. I mean, there's just not enough space. There's not enough people. There's not enough global indifference. There's just no way that you can kill 40,000 people without the world stopping it. And right now we have 34,049 Palestinians who have been killed since October 7th. Another 76,901 who have been wounded in Israeli attacks on Gaza since October 7th. But on top of the 34,000 who've been killed, the more than 34,000, and the nearly 77,000 who've been injured, there's also 8,000 who lay under rubble right now. 8,000. So that takes a number over 40. And, you know, the number of children every hour that gets killed or wounded is absolutely stunning. And so we have to keep track of that as we talk about the war on Gaza, because those numbers I just gave you are as of right now. The next thing is, how do we get here? Well, that's why we cover so many of the stories of death, not because they're the only stories of death, but because they speak to why the numbers keep going up in such dramatic fashion. For example, emergency services in Gaza have retrieved the bodies of now 50 Palestinians, 50, from a mass grave at the Nasser Medical Complex in Khan Yunis. As you all know, Israeli forces withdrew from the Nasser Medical Complex about 2 weeks ago. We've seen the same thing at Al Shifa Hospital. We've seen the same thing in other places, where not only are we told that Israeli military didn't kill anybody, or they killed minimal people, or they killed 2 or 3 key terrorist sites. Forgive me. And then these reports come a couple weeks after they leave, and there's a mass grave with 50 people, which means the widespread, what appears to be indiscriminate killing of people was coupled with just throwing their bodies into a big old ditch or a big old hole. And the medical workers found them sometimes. The ER service, sometimes it's the journalists. People are finding it. And what they find reinforces the idea that this has been a brutal, and again, indiscriminate killing of folk. We also, in addition to that, have seen a powerful, really scary wave of violence in Rafah. In Rafah, a pregnant woman and 6 children were killed. There were 8 people killed total, but 7 of them were this pregnant woman and 6 children. The only good news that came out of the scene in Rafah was that the doctors were able to save the unborn child. Now, we don't know what that's going to mean long term, obviously, as there's so much death. And there's so much destruction of hospitals, of IVF centers, of all these things. I don't know what that means long term, but I do know in the short term that baby was saved. And we pray for that. I pray for that baby. I pray for that baby's safety and ability to survive this unimaginably awful circumstance. But in Rafah, the death of that pregnant woman and 6 children is reflective again of a new wave of violence. And in Rafah, Rafah is a city in the southernmost border, or southernmost part of Gaza. It's a city that's supposed to hold 250,000 people, but as of now, it holds about 1.5 million people. It's incredibly dense. The people there don't have anything. They're unhoused. They came there because they were fled violence. They came there because their homes were destroyed. They came there because they were ordered to, in many ways. And Ashifa is now a place where Netanyahu and his military leaders have promised a ground invasion any day now. And I don't mean this hyperbolically or dramatically. Any day now, there can be a ground invasion in Rafah. And if there is, I don't understand how people think sometimes. We're 6 months into the war on Gaza. Somebody asked, why get pregnant in the middle of a war? We're 6 months in. Babies take 9 months. Most of the pregnancies we see right now happened before October 7th. The woman whose baby was saved, the baby was saved because it was viable. It was sufficiently viable and strong, and it was sufficiently viable and strong because the baby was probably 8 or 9 months. 8 or 9 months is 2 or 3 months longer than the war in Gaza has been. So, yeah. Also, there are people in the first month of the war who didn't think that the war would last 6 months, since it usually lasts 21 days, 28 days, sometimes 7 days. The idea that it would go 197 days was somewhat unimaginable, but equally unimaginable, um, equally unimaginable to me is the idea that we would blame somebody for getting pregnant. Um, after the people prosecuting the war, an illegal war, an a violent war, and then necessarily violent war. All war is violent, but not necessarily violent war. After all of that, we would be blaming the pregnant person and not the people who are committing these gross war crimes. I mean, it's a strange, it's a strange, it's a strange question, strange thought to me. But that's neither here nor there. Israeli forces have killed 14 people during a raid on the Nord Shems refugee camp. That's according to the Palestinian Health Ministry. While also Israeli settlers shot dead an ambulance driver trying to trying to reach Palestinians wounded in violence south of Nablus. There's so much going on. Now, against the backdrop of all of this, for context, is the United States House of Representatives. The House has passed $26 billion in funding for Israel. To be clear, that's part of a bigger funding package of, I believe, 94 billion all around the world. So it's not just Israel that's being funded, but $26 billion is being funded for Israel. And it's not all for wartime activities, but $26 billion at a moment of war is terrifying. It's absolutely terrifying. So those are the big Gaza updates. We obviously are continuing to follow what's going on in Israel, what's going on in Lebanon, what's going on in Syria, what's going on in Iran, since Israel yesterday launched, or 2 nights ago launched its retaliation attack in Iran, after Iran, of course, launched its retaliation attack in Israel. All this stemming from Israel's striking of Iranian territory. It was in Damascus, but it was still a diplomatic space. It was, which makes it technically Iranian territory. If you strike a consulate, you're striking the country, legally speaking. And the thought of a regional war is not only scary, but it's increasingly likely, something we're going to have to come to terms with. It's not looking less likely. And think about Houthis in the Red Sea, or Ansarullah in the Red Sea, and to think about Hezbollah on the northern Israeli or southern Lebanese border. Think about Iran not just saying or being spoken for or proxied by Hezbollah, which is not always lockstep with the Iranian government, but now you got the actual Iranian government raising questions and concerns. At the same time, the Hamas has been far from defeated. We are very close to a full-scale regional war. We're very close to not World War III, but a not far from it. It wouldn't be that hyperbolic to say World War III. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm saying that could happen, and we have to take that quite seriously. And I'm hoping that we are taking it quite seriously. Anyway, family, I'm going to run, but I want to thank you all for watching. And we'll continue to cover this every single night, every single day. If you have questions, comments, leave them in the chat, and we'll answer them. We'll also do it during office hours, which will be this week. We'll do at least 1 or 2 office hours this week, in addition to night school. Every night, Monday to Friday at 10:30 Eastern time, we do night school. It's not a podcast. It's not a TV show. It is a global classroom where we answer questions, where we engage ideas, where we bring in some of the most interesting and thoughtful guests, all to break stuff down. All to break stuff down. So make sure you check out Night School Monday to Friday. We got some great special guests this week, starting on Monday, and we'll break it all down. Happy 420 to those who celebrate. For me, it's Luther Vandross's birthday. For me, it's an opportunity to think about music and joy and love. But if the sticky icky is your move, then success on that too. Everyone, make sure you drop in a comment. I mean, not a comment. Make sure you drop in a like. Also, hit the subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. Hit the join button if you haven't joined already, and you can always drop something in our Cash App or our Venmo, Marc Lamont Hill. But other than that, I will see y'all tomorrow. We'll keep hoping and praying for peace.